So we've already talked about the dashboard and plot app, which are data visualization tools that are coded in R. Today we're going to be going through and using RStudio, which is also running on R. So I'm at our home page. I'm going to be using the Los Angeles USD server, so I'm going to click on that. And I'm going to scroll down to RStudio. My login is the same as the one that I used for the app, as well as the IDS homepage login. So once you log in, you notice that there are three panes here. The console, which is where you'll be entering your code. The environment, which is where you'll see values and objects. The files, plots, packages, help, viewer. Notice we've got multiple tabs here, but this pane is where you'll see any plots, graphs, visualizations that you generate. Now there's a fourth pane. The fourth pane is our preview pane. This way you'll be able to see any variables or observations, spreadsheets that you are using within RStudio. It's also where we can create an R script. So I'm going to go to this top left-hand corner where this green plus sign is, and I'm going to create an R script. Think of it as somewhere where we're going to be able to take notes on what we're doing within RStudio. So today we're going to look at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention data, which is CDC data. Now the CDC is a government agency that collects data. Specifically, we're looking at teenagers on a variety of topics. So let's start by loading and then viewing our data. So to load our data, I'm going to type data CDC, and I can run it straight from this R script. Notice that when I run it, it automatically puts it into our console, and it's created a value here in our environment. So by typing data CDC, that is loading our CDC data. So I'm going to create a comment here to remind me that that's what it does. So to create a comment, use a # or hashtag, and this is loads the CDC data. But we haven't been able to view it yet. So let's view it. So I'm going to type view CDC, and I'm going to run that code. Now notice I got an error. It could not find this function. And the reason why is because view technically should be an uppercase view. So as you type into RStudio, it is case sensitive. So let's try this again with an uppercase. Notice how it's bringing up that CDC data into this preview pane. This allows me to view the data. So I'm going to write a comment, view data in preview pane. And I'll write a comment here, error, because lowercase. So now that we're able to view this data, how is this data presented? Well, it's given to us in rows and columns. We can also see here that in our environment pane, our CDC data now is showing as data. And it's giving us that we have 15,624 observations with 33 variables. Now let's say we want to know the names of those variables. Well, we can do that. Let's go back to our R script, and let's type names of CDC. We'll run that. And notice in our console we can see our list of names. So this gives us lists names of variables. What if we want more detailed information about these variables? Well, we can ask for help. So let's run this. Notice it popped up here on our plots pane under the Help tab. And this gives us more detailed information about this data set. So let's say we wanted to know, if we're looking at our CDC data set, let's say we're looking at this and we say, hey, height, it says 1.73 for our first observation. That doesn't seem like it's in feet, which is what we typically use in the US. So we can look over here at the help and we can see that height is actually being measured in meters. So this help function is giving us more detailed information. Gives more detailed information. I'm just going to put info for data set. So now let's see how I can figure out the numbers of rows and columns in the data set. Well, I'm going to type DIM CDC. I'm going to run that code. And it gives me 15,624, which matches our observations, number of observations, which is the number of rows. So row 1, row 2, as we go down, there are 15,624 rows. And this 33 corresponds with our variables, which are our columns. So I'm going to put over here rows and columns of data. Now let's see how to access a number of observations for a specific variable. So we're going to do a tally. We're going to look at seatbelt. And we're looking at our CDC data still. Notice that this seatbelt corresponds with seatbelt from our list of names of variables. So now let's run this. So notice it's giving us the number of observations within each category. So I've got never, rarely, sometimes, most of the time, always, and then non-applicable or not answered. So what this code does, it gives us the number of observations of a specific variable. So we can write that as shows number of observations of a specific variable. Let's try a different variable. So instead of seatbelt, let's look at height. I'm still looking at my CDC data, so it's still going to be data equals CDC. Now notice this one looks a little different. The reason being is for seatbelt, we're specifically into categories. Never, rarely, sometimes, most of the time. But for our height data, it's all numerical. So it's not easily put into categories. So I'm going to put a little note here. Height is numerical. So you might not want to use tally for this numerical data. Notice it's a bit messy. There's not much information that we can gain from it. Let's try a few other variables. Let's do tally. Let's look at eat fruit. So I'm going to run that. So notice this one is very similar to seatbelt. I'm split into categories again. Did not eat fruit, 1 to 3 times ate fruit, 4 to 6 times ate fruit. So we're going to label this one as categorical. Let's try another one. Let's look at weight. So let's run that. Notice, primarily numerical, all numerical. There are no categories. It's very difficult to read this output. This one is numerical. So try the next two on your own. Try grade. And try gender. So as we go through this course, you'll be doing labs. To load the menu of labs, you're going to type load _ labs with an empty parentheses. So I'm going to run this. And it's giving me an output of all the possible labs for the course. Let's say we want to look at lab 1A, our very first lab of the course. I'm going to select lab 1, since it's designated lab 1 is lab 1A. And then hit enter. So notice I had to put the 1 into the console since I do not have options within RScript. RScript is just allowing us to keep notes. So when I typed 1 enter, this lab popped up within our viewer. So that's where you can follow along with the lab. There's an arrow at the bottom, so you can click on that arrow to continue forward into the lab. Notice we've already done some of the codes from our lab. Anything in this gray box is a code that you can copy and paste into your RScript or console to run. I can move back with the back arrow if I miss something or want to review something. Before we finish out this RStudio Basics, I'm going to show you how to save your RScript. So I'm just going to click on this save icon. You can call it whatever you want. I'm going to call it RStudio Basics. Save. And it doesn't visually show that it's done anything, but if you click on Files, notice my RScript is saved here. So if I close this out, I can open it back up by just clicking on it. And it has all my notes from that beginning RStudio Basics.